and destroy everything we touch. Yet you came. And we're grateful for that. You paid our price. You redeemed us out of the slave market of our own sin. That is just almost mind-boggling to me. And I pray that you bless those whose names have been called before the throne tonight. Be what they need in every case, in every situation. And may they give you credit and praise for answering that prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Here. Okay. Keep a positive attitude. Here's the chapters 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 17. Those chapters deal with the same issue. And that issue is this. It's called the Syro-Ephraimitic War. And it happened in 734 BC. The tandem duo of Syria and Israel, the northern 9.5 tribes, which in the what we're going to read tonight is called Ephraim because they were the main tribe. All right? So we've got Syria and Ephraim, which is Syria and the northern 9.5 tribes. They signed an alliance, and they were going to go against Assyria because Assyria was a growing threat to that region. They were gobbling up these little city-states, and, of course, Syria and Israel knew they were next, and so they wanted to try to stop them. Well, a little more help would be helpful, and so they go down to Judea, where King Ahaz, he was young. He's like 25 years old, very little experience. And Pekah and Rezin, Pekah was the king of Israel, Rezin was the king of Syria. They met with him and said, hey, look, why don't you join us, and then there will be three of us. There will be Syria, Israel, and Judah. That way we can handle Assyria. Well, Ahaz says, no, thank you. Don't want to do that. Pekah and Rezin get really ticked off. Well, why? Well, I just don't want to do that. And so thank you very much for coming. God bless you. Have a safe trip home. Well, that didn't go over real well with these two kings. And the reason that Ahaz did not want to join this triumvirate was because he had an under-the-table deal with Syria to buy protection from them. Because he knew that Syria and Israel were going to attack Jerusalem. And they couldn't handle that by themselves. And so he just, under the table, gets a hold of Sennacherib, who is the king of Assyria, and says, hey, if I give you some money, would you? Yes, I'll help you. You give me some money. And so Ahaz goes into the temple, steals a lot of the gold and all the stuff, the treasury out of the temple in Jerusalem, gets it up to Sennacherib, and Sennacherib says, I got your back, buddy. Don't worry about it. I've got your back. Well, what he did, he hired a bear. Ahaz hired this wild bear, and he did indeed take care of Syria and Israel. But guess who else he took care of? Yeah. He apparently forgot all about his agreement or just didn't care about it. And so boogity, boogity, booty, here he comes down to Jerusalem. And so here's what made the Lord furious. The southern kingdom, who was the more spiritual of the two, okay, he was furious because instead of coming to him and saying, we worship you, we praise you, we need your help, would you protect your people? They didn't do that. He said, no, I'm going to call Assyria. Assyria is going to take God's place here. God got very angry about that. And so this is the background. He brings in Isaiah, and the Lord says, Isaiah, I want you to go. Ahaz, who was this young king, was conducting a tour of the water system in Jerusalem because they knew they were about to be attacked, and pandemonium. I mean, people were scared to death in Jerusalem. I mean, oh my goodness, we're going to get attacked. What are we going to do? Da, 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 da. And so he's checking out, make sure the water system is okay. And the Lord says, go to him at the Gihon Springs, which is in Jerusalem, and I want you to tell him some things, and we're going to get into what he told him and what he wrote on this great big placard, and but it still didn't change his mind. So anyway, that's the historical background of chapter 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 17, verse 1 of chapter 8. Moreover, the Lord said unto me, take thee a great roll. Great roll means a large placard. Now here's what they did. They made signs like on a piece of wood or metal. They would cover, let's just say it's a piece of metal. They would cover this metal with beeswax. Then they would take a stylus and they would print. You didn't write these languages like we write on, we don't print or script, they didn't do that. They pressed this little stylus in all kind of different shapes, and they had different styluses for different types of shapes, and he would press that in this wax, and you could read it. And so he tells him, I want you to write the previous 5 chapters on this piece of metal or wood, whatever it was, but it was covered with wax. I want you to write this, and I want you to go put it in downtown Jerusalem. And I want you to have some witnesses that will testify that this was done on this particular date, because when it happens, they'll be able to say, oh my goodness, this was written on this date. I mean, it was like 2 years before it actually happened. And so he's going to get some witnesses here, and I'm going to tell you about them. They're not who you think you would want as a witness on your team, okay? But anyway, so I want you to take this great roll and write in it with a man's pen. That means this man's pen is just street language. Don't make it like insurance language or medical. Don't do that. You just write it. Hey, y'all, something's about to happen, and you ain't going to like it, and here's why you ain't going to like it, and here's why it's going to happen. And so write with just common, ordinary language concerning Mayor Shala Hashbaz. Okay, that's his second son. Now, in the Old Testament names were self-contained sentences. All right, they were sentences, multi-syllabic or multi-syllable sentences that in nearly every case contained a definition of a deity. All right, you remember when we were in Daniel? Oh, that was over in school. The names that the Babylonian king gave the 3 Hebrew children were Babylonian names. Every one of them gave Babylonian gods the credit for whatever they knew and whatever they had. And so these names were not just, oh, that's cool. That's a cool name. They didn't do that. They gave these people basically self-contained sentences. And you could read the name and get the message, all right? And so that's what's going on here. And so he says, I want you to write concerning your son, Mayor Shalahashbaz, which means speedy to the spoils. So something is coming, and when it starts coming, it's going to get here fast, all right? So he writes the previous 5 chapters, presses it in this wax thing, all right? And I took unto me faithful witnesses to record. One of them was Uriah the priest. You say, well, great, we got a preacher. Yeah, well, not really. This guy was an accomplice in Ahaz's idolatry. So it's kind of like getting Nancy Pelosi to swear to Donald Trump's trustworthiness, all right? So that's kind of what we got going on here. So you can't say, well, they were good buddies and, he's just trying to cover his flank. No. If there's going to be a problem, this guy's going to, you know what I'm saying? This is going to be one of those witnesses. And so is the next guy, Zechariah, the son of Jeberechiah. So we've got 2 opposing viewpoints. There was a strong pro-Assyrian group in Jerusalem, all right? Isaiah said, we don't need to do this. This group said, oh, this is what we're going to do. They were saying it, it's the popular thing to do. It's the wise thing to do. But nobody asked, is it the right thing to do? Nobody was asking that question. All right, now look down in verse number 3. So he goes to the prophetess, that's his wife, and she conceived and bare a son. Then said the Lord to me, call his name Speedy to the Prey, which is what Meir Shalahashbaz means. For before the child shall have knowledge to cry, my father and my mother, all right? Before this child is old enough to be able to link together an intelligent sentence, which was approximately 2 years old. Before that happens, the riches of Damascus, that was Syria, the capital of Syria, and the spoil of Samaria. Samaria is now what we're calling Israel, all right? The two kings, Pekah and Rezin. Before this kid can put together intelligent words to make a sentence, the spoil are going to be taken away before the king of Assyria. Well, this boy was born. This is just so neat to me. He was born in 734 BC. By 732 BC, guess what clowns were dead? Pekah and Rezin. You got, before this kid could say, Mama, Daddy, got to go to the bathroom, whatever he had to say before he could link together intelligent sentences, these guys were dead. Well, that's exactly, all right, now, this was on the board, all right? This was pressed into wax. So in 734 BC, these two guys are dead. And people are walking by this board going, oh, whoa. Meir Shalahashbaz is 2 years old. He can't even say his own name, at 2 years old. But he can say, Mom and Daddy. Now, verse 5. The Lord spake also unto me again, saying, for as much as his people refuseth the waters of Shiloah that go softly. All right, now we're going to get a little symbolic. There was a spring in Jerusalem that had like a real easy flowing river. It was like a little creek, I suppose you could say. And, it wasn't dangerous. It wasn't white water, anything like that. This is a picture of the Lord. So they could have chosen the easy thing. They could have chosen the best thing. They could have chosen something that wasn't going to hurt them, which is me. I would have protected them. This water that goes softly, and rejoice in Rezin and Remaliah's son. Now therefore, behold, the Lord bringeth upon them the waters of the river. And this is Euphrates. All right. Guess what city was located on the banks of this wild whitewater river Euphrates? That's right. The capital city of Assyria. So here's what they've done. They have chosen, instead of this peaceful river, they have chosen a wild flood. And the king of Assyria was going to be like a flash flood, going to wash down through Damascus, going to keep flowing right on down into Samaria or Israel or Ephraim, and it's going to come down into Judah. All right, let's see how far this thing goes. Now therefore, behold, the Lord bringeth up upon them the waters of the river, strong and many, even the king of Assyria, and all his glory. And he shall come up over all his channels and go over all his banks. In other words, he's going to leave his home and he's going to just flood that part of the world with his armies. I mean, this thing is going to be just massive. And they could, from what I've been able to put together, Assyria had a foot army of about 100,000 soldiers. I mean, this was a massive, huge military. And they were just going to come down like a flood. And he shall pass through Judah. 701 BC is when this happened. He shall overflow and go over. He shall reach even to the neck. Now, the neck is the city of Jerusalem. That is, the neck is, the head's on the neck. And Jerusalem is on this really high precipice kind of a thing. And this flood is going to come down. It's going to wash down from the north. It's going to take out Damascus. It's going to take out Ephraim, and it's going to take out Judah, and it's even going to come up to the neck, and the only thing it's going to be showing is Jerusalem. They did not take the city of Jerusalem. All right? And again, this is pressed into wax. They won't take the city of Jerusalem, and they didn't. All right? So this king of Assyria is going to come, and he's going to spill over all of his channels, and it's going to come down, even reach into the neck, and the stretching out of his wings. And this is the extreme bands of the Assyrian army. I mean, it's like a wingspan on a condor. You know, they could line up for miles, and they were like grasshoppers. They just ate everything in their path. And so they're going to come down with the wings all spread out, and they've got men all over the place. And it's going to fill the breadth of thy land, O Emmanuel. So this is the Lord's land. All right? Verse 9. Associate yourselves. Now, sometimes King James uses words, translates words that you don't understand the way they need to be understood, I suppose. And this is one of those words. The word associate there, it sounds nothing like it really is. But the word associate there means do your worst. So here's the Lord talking to Assyria. All right. Do the best you can. Come on down. Do the worst you can, really. You know, do what you think you need to do. O ye people, and ye shall be broken in pieces. Come on down. Be glad to have you. This is the Lord talking now. And give ear, all ye far countries. Gird yourselves, and ye shall be broken in pieces. Come on down. Lock and load. Bring all your equipment. Bring all your soldiers. Bring it all. Throw it all. Like you're going to just tear everybody up. All y'all nations out there that are going to join Assyria, y'all listening to me? This is the Lord talking now. Everybody got it? Come on. All y'all, come on. You're going to be broken in pieces. And that's what happened historically. All right? Gird yourselves, and you shall be broken in pieces. Now, verse 10. Take counsel together. This is this pro-Assyrian alliance in Jerusalem that just urged and pled and begged. They have, don't break this alliance, this treaty with us. Don't do that, all right? So it says, take counsel together, and it shall come to naught. Speak the word, that is this order to assault Jerusalem, and it shall not stand, for God is with us. Say what you want to say. Bring as many rifles and bring all that stuff. It's not going to do you any good. I'm going to break you. And so the Lord is just inviting them. For the Lord spake thus to me with a strong hand. So the Lord said, Isaiah said, the Lord got me off in a counseling session and kind of pointed his finger at me in a strong way. He said what he's about to tell him, and instructed me that I should not walk in the way of this people. Isaiah, do not fall in line with this pro-Assyrian alliance. Do not do that. I will shield my people. I will protect them. I am furious that they have made this agreement with the Assyrian, and now he's on his way. He's on his way. And Mayor Shalahashbaz. And so these people would read that name. Well, what? But the ones that had any kind of spiritual intuition at all understood, gulp, maybe we haven't done the smartest thing here. Well, turns out they didn't. Now, look at verse 12. Say ye not a confederacy to all them to whom this people shall say a confederacy. Now, again, that's another one of those words that doesn't make sense, but the word confederacy means conspiracy. All right? So there's the Lord is saying, look, don't hear and get all jacked out of shape about all these conspiracy theories that you hear. Oh, my word, Assyria is going to come down here and they're going to clean our clock. And oh, my goodness, Judah. And what are we going to? He said, Don't get online and start reading all this stuff. Don't do that. Don't fear what they fear. Oh, let's read. This is really interesting. He says, say ye not a conspiracy to all them whom this people shall say, a conspiracy, neither fear ye their fear, nor be afraid. In other words, don't share the fears of your culture. Now here's, to me, just a real clear application to contemporary culture. The social media. Have you noticed that social media is constantly, there's one conspiracy after another, after another. Have you heard about what the Democrats are doing? Have you heard about, oh my goodness, have you know what they're going to do now? Have you heard about what they're doing about global warming? Hey, you know this AR-15, they're going to come get all your AR-15s. Everybody, we're not going to have a gun left in the country. And so everybody's kicking all this stuff around. And I talk to Christians pretty regularly, scared to death. Well, Jim, what are we going to do? Well, it's not up to culture to make final decisions about stuff. And so he tells Isaiah, all right, look, bud, don't be afraid of what your culture's afraid of. So I want to encourage us in here tonight. Congress is not in charge of the ultimate destiny of this country. All right? God is. Jamie? Yeah, I didn't hear about that. You've stolen my childhood, kind of a thing. Just understand that the Republicans aren't in charge of the country, ultimately. And thank God for that, you know. Now, I'm a conservative, but, I mean, I'm glad that they don't have the final say. I am really glad that the Democrats don't have the final say on stuff, you know. And so, relax. Just relax. Don't fear what they fear. You know, don't do that. All right? Verse number 13. Well, what should we do? Sanctify the Lord of hosts himself. No, put him where he needs to be, you know. Don't put him down here, oh my goodness, I hope the Lord can handle this. Don't do that. You know. Put him up where he belongs. Let him be your fear. You want to fear something? Fear God. You know. Fear offending him. Don't fear offending the Democrats or the Republicans. Don't fear that kind of stuff. Fear offending God, all right? Let him be your dread. And he shall be for a sanctuary. Now, this is Emmanuel. Talk about Christ here. And he shall be for a sanctuary. All right, now, if you believe and if you trust him to take your part in this battle that's about to happen, if you will do that, it will be a safe place. A sanctuary is like a safe haven or a harbor of safety here. But if you don't, this same one that was going to be a sanctuary is going to be a stone to you. A stone of stumbling. And so you're either going to believe him or you're going to trip on him. He's going to be a stumbling block to you. And for a rock of offense to both the houses of Israel. So now we're not just talking about Judah. We're talking about up north as well. We're talking about Ephraim or Israel. This is what God will be, a gin. And a gin is like a trap, just an engine to catch animals, okay? A gin and a snare to the inhabitants of Jerusalem. So, if you choose to turn to Sennacherib and the Assyrians rather than to me, just understand you are putting yourself in a wire snare. And I'm telling you up front. And this was on the board. You know, these people walk by there every day and read this. Now, don't you know that there were some that were going, get out of here. You bunch of doom, gloom preachers. That's all y'all do is talk about God's judgment and da-da-da. Well, if people obeyed God, we wouldn't have to do that, you know, but we don't. All right, now, look at verse number 15. Many among them shall stumble and fall and be broken and be snared and be taken. Bind up the testimony, seal the law among my disciples. No, he was writing now in a parchment. This is something different. And so he was to roll this up and seal this because this was to be fulfilled at a later date. Verse number 17. And I will wait upon the Lord that hideth his face from the house of Jacob, and I will look for him. Somebody's got to do this. All right, the Lord has hidden his face from Judah. He's furious at them. Isaiah's going to go looking for him. Isaiah's going to be, here am I, send me. He's going to be the missing link here between God and Judah. You know, somebody's got to do that. Somebody today got to do that. In every church, somebody's got to do that. In every nation, in every community, somebody has got to do that. Got to recognize, you know, apparently we're not being blessed here. God apparently has turned his face away from us. I'm going to go find him. You know, I'm going to go find out. All right, verse 18. Behold, I and the children whom the Lord hath given me are for signs and wonders in Israel from the Lord of hosts, which dwelleth in Mount Zion. How many sons does he have? 2. Their names are self-contained sentences. One is, a remnant shall return. The other is, swift to the prey. There's a message, all right? And so he says, the Lord gave me these 2 boys, and their very names are the messages. And again, we don't do that today. You probably don't even know what your name means. Mine means strong. Strong. All right, there's one person who knows what a name means. What's your name? What's your mean? Peace. Okay.
Mine's warrior.
Is it warrior? All right.
Never guess that.
But most of us, you know, we don't name our kids like this anymore, but they did that. And so these 2 boys are living messages. What was Isaiah's name? What does his name mean? The Lord saves. So the Lord saves. He's going to save a remnant. But he's going to kick your rear end first, you know. And so when they came back from Babylon, remember, after 70 years over there, just a remnant of them came back, and it was that remnant that ultimately produced Emmanuel. And so the Lord said, not everybody's going to die. There will always be a Jew, always. And so the Lord made sure that just a little remnant was saved, and they came back. And so he says, I and my children, we are living messages. And when they shall say unto you, seek unto them that have familiar spirits. Now, familiar spirit was an animal that a witch kept with them, like the black cat, you know, that witches have, kind of a famous thing at Halloween anyway. These people were looking to witches and warlocks and wizards for information about what they should do. And he says, when they say, well, Isaiah, no, we need to seek somebody that we can actually talk to. And there's a warlock down the road, and he usually has some pretty good information, and so when they say that, and he said, and I love the way he addresses this with these familiar spirits, and unto wizards that peep. Peep. Peep means to faintly chirp, like a little bitty chicken. You know, they're not out hollering like a big rooster. What we're talking about, this peeping is a word that is kin to our word ventriloquist. Now, here's what would happen. All right, this is about to get really dark. These wizards would act as the puppets, and they would be fake ventriloquists to sound like people from the grave talking through them. You ever seen people, the ventriloquists? I mean, they drink water and keep talking. They can sing songs and keep talking. What's that guy, Jeff? What's his name? No, who? Dunham, Jeff Dunham. That guy's hilarious. He cracks me up. He's good. I mean, I try to look at his Adam's apple. It doesn't move. His lips don't. I'm like, wow. Now, here's what these guys would do. They would act, and you couldn't see them. You couldn't see their lips moving. But they were making these low, soft, faint noises as if, and they were talking, as if, well, we have touched base with the spirit world. And the spirit world says we need to keep our association with Assyria. There it is. Man, we have information from beyond the grave. And so these guys, they were just full of it. And so these wizards that peep and that mutter, should not a people seek unto their God? What are you doing? Shouldn't people seek a living God? For the living to the dead? In other words, why are you trying to get in touch with dead folks to talk to living folks? They were trying to, and this is called necromancy. Contacting dead people, to try to get information from beyond the world of the living. And so this is what was going on in Judah. You had these ventriloquists. You had wizards. You had warlocks. You had all this stuff. This is where they're getting their information from. Instead of just simply finding their peace and their security in the God of heaven, they were looking to this wild, rabid animal called Sennacherib, the king of Assyria. Why they felt comfortable doing that, I have no clue. But Ahaz was kind of a kid, all right, easily influenced. And so there were some guys in his administration that convinced him this is what we need to do. And guess where those guys got their information? From the peepers, exactly, all right? So I guess when you talk about I need to talk to my peeps, that I guess this is what they're talking about. Yeah. I ain't talking to my peeps. So that's an old phrase. There's nothing new about that. All right, now look at verse 20. To the law and to the testimony, if they speak not according to this word, it's because there's no light in them. In other words, if they do not have any proximity to the truth at all, they are full of darkness. All right, they're not telling you the truth. Do not listen to them because it's outside the rails of the law. And they shall pass through it, that is the land. All right, these people are going to pass through, hardly bested. All right, and that word bested means oppressed with anxiety. And so these people, when Assyria comes, Judah is just going to be oppressed with anxiety, and they're going to be taking Xanax, and they're going to be crushed by this emotionally, physically, financially. It's just not going to be a good thing. And it shall come to pass that when they shall be hungry, they shall fret themselves and curse their king. Really? I thought this was the one they thought was all that. Oh, yeah, we need to keep this alliance with Assyria. But now they're going to curse the guy because things didn't turn out exactly the way he thought they would. And they're going to curse their king and their God. God, why did you let this happen to us? Excuse me? If I am not mistaken, he is talking through this whole family here. Every male in this family is a self-revealing sentence of warning to these, and they walk right by it. They're going to curse their king and their God and look upward. What are you doing? What's up? We got all this trouble. I've heard people do that. If it was, God, what do you do? Why did you let that happen? And here I'm making decisions that violate God's word, and then when it collapses, I blame God. Well, verse 22. And they shall look unto the earth. All right, they got a garden spot out in the backyard, and they've been eating out of that garden spot. They got some English peas, and they got some squash, and they got some stuff out there. That's all dead. It's graveyard dead. And so they're going to go out and look at the property down at the earth, and they say, well, we need some food here. Nothing was growing. And so they'll look into the earth, and behold, trouble. Everything's dead. And darkness. Dimness of anguish. And they shall be driven to darkness. Wow. Now, this hadn't happened yet. Now, can you imagine people hearing this? This is, I mean, we're the chosen ones. This kind of stuff happens to all these other pagans, not us. Well, yeah. And when it happens, look at the date on the bottom of the wax. Look at the date down there. When was this? This happened several years ago, and y'all refused this. Now, the first 7 verses of chapter 9 belong with chapter 8. So the first verse of chapter 9 is actually chapter 9, verse 8. And that's when a new prophecy is going to spring up. Now, look at verse 1 of chapter 9. Nevertheless, the dimness shall not be as such as was in her vexation. In other words, it's not going to be as bad as it was at a particular time in the past, when at the first he lightly afflicted the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali. This was a deportation that took place under Tiglath-Pileser a few years earlier. Said that was it's not going to be like that. That was a light affliction, and afterward did more grievously afflict her by the way of the sea beyond Jordan in Galilee of the nations. And so it's not going to be like that. Verse 2, the people that walked in darkness have seen a great light. Now, Galilee, the word Galil means circle, and where this great oppression was going to happen, which was up in Galilee. All right, Galilee is the north tribe. All right, that's Israel. That's Ephraim. Guess where Christ came from? Galilee. A lot of his ministry. And so these people that walked in darkness up there in Galilee have seen a great light. Now we're jumping ahead. Now he's talking about Jesus, when Jesus comes. They that dwell in the land of the shadow of death, upon them hath the light shined. Thou hast multiplied the nation. This is at the return of the captives from Babylon. The population exploded because of those thousands that came back. And hast not increased the joy. Now that's a question. Haven't you increased the joy? I mean, why would these people not trust you to take care of them? I mean, you've increased their joy. You've brought them home from Babylonian captivity. Look at all the stuff you've done. Well, can we not ask the same question about the United States of America in 2019? Look at what God's done for us. What are we doing? What's the matter with us? And so the joy before thee, according to the joy in harvest. Now, we don't live off the garden. We're not an agrarian society like these people were. They ate off their garden spots, all right? If the garden died, they didn't have anything to eat. And so when it came through, it's kind of like when you get, your big bonus check at the end of the year. Oh, wow, this is great if you get that at your job. And so this is, it was just, man, we got grapes as big as baseballs. This is wonderful. This is great. We've got fruit, and they had vegetables. And so all the men rejoice when they divide the spoil. That's the way it's going to be, all right? For thou hast broken the yoke of his burden and the staff of his shoulder. Now, this means that the staff of his shoulder is the yoke, like that an oxen wears to pull, and so it's a sign of slavery. But that's been broken off, okay? The staff of his shoulder and the rod of his oppressor, as in the day of Midian. This is when the Lord, and I'm getting back into another confrontation that we won't get into it right now, but the Assyrians, the Chaldeans, the Persians, and the Macedonians, the Lord broke them, all right? So, and Israel was struggling and suffering under their oppression, and that was broken. For every battle of the warrior is with confused noise, and garments rolled in blood, but this shall be with burning and fuel of fire. These soldiers that the Lord took care of on behalf of the Jews, They took their bloody garments and used it for fire, kindling. All right, they started the fires, kept their fires burning with just the bloody coats of these soldiers. Now, this Mayor Shalahashbaz, this is the child that 7:14 talks about. Unto us a son is given. That was the immediate fulfillment. Now there is a complete fulfillment when Christ was born. All right, we understand that. But verse number 6 now is going to tell us about this child that is going to be born. This is not perfectly fulfilled in Mayor Shalahashbaz. For unto us a child is born, but a son is given. There's a difference here. The child is born, but a son specifically was given. And the government shall be upon his shoulder. Now look what was on the shoulder of them in verse 4. What was on their shoulder? The yoke of slavery. That's broken. But now what's going to be on the shoulder of Emmanuel? The weight of the government. And he is the only one qualified to run the government, by the way. He's not a Republican. He's not a Democrat. I guess he's an independent. You know, he's not a politician. He is the only benevolent dictator in the universe. And that's who you want to run things. And his name, now we're going to even find out what his name is. His name shall be called Wonderful Counselor. All right, take the comma out between wonderful and counselor. It's not his name will be wonderful and his name will be counselor. It is Wonderful Counselor. So that phrase Wonderful Counselor means a private advisor. Not only will he be the advisor to the country and the world, but he can be your counselor personally, privately. This is how intimate, this is how personal this relationship is going to be. So he's the Wonderful Counselor, the mighty God, the everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. I love the word peace. It's where we get the word, you ready for this? It's where we get the word tranquilizer from. What's a tranquilizer do? Just calm you down. He is the wonderful tranquilizer. Now, he's not a drug, you understand that, but he's the one that, when you look around and you see, oh my word, the seas are going to rise 25 feet in the next 10 years, and all the polar bears are going to burn up, and they're going to be floating down the Peace River, and it's just, oh my word, it's going to be awful and just terrible, but calm down. He's the tranquilizer. And I'm sure that there's not a person in here that has not experienced this tranquilizing effect of the grace of God in your life. I was talking to Richard Kaiser last night. Esther just died, and he was telling me, he said, I've done my mourning. He's doing great. He said, I've done my mourning. He said, I've been mourning for the last 2 years. He'd take care of Esther and then go out on the porch, drink a cup of coffee, and cry. And he said, I've mourned, I have been broken, and he said, I didn't expect this. And it's like the grace of God. It's like an ambulance. It shows up at the scene of the emergency, and if you don't have an emergency, you don't know what this level of grace is. But when your emergency hits, you're gonna know it. The Lord will be there, and he says, I feel good. Of course, he misses her. And he says, I loved her. He was married to her for 52, 53 years, something like that. And he said, I feel this, she's okay. We prayed for her healing, and the Lord answered our prayer. She's great. And so I am so glad that this God that we serve is not this distant, separated, isolated deity in heaven that has nothing to do with us. He is a daily counselor for us in any kind of a situation. Of the increase of his government. The increase of his government. He is such a wonderful counselor, and he is such a governor that the peace of his government will just continue to increase. How can you get better than perfect? I don't know. God knows how to do that, And so of the increase of his government, there will be no end. What's going to be going on in heaven in eternity? I have no clue. It just will. It's like I know you won't wake up, we won't be sleeping, but it's just like you're going to learn something new. We'll discover some new facet, some new phase of the character or the glory of God, or maybe get to go to another section of the universe that we didn't get to go to yesterday. I don't know, but it's never going to end. Do what? Yeah, all right. And to establish it with judgment and with justice, most governments stay in place by military power. Most do, to keep people from coming in and overthrowing it and stuff like that. But the government of God is based on what? Well, judgment and justice. From henceforth, even forever, the zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform this. God is anxious to get this program started. He's zealous to get this started. Now, that's way out yonder. It's in the future. And so the Lord said, all right, now let's get back to the business at hand. We've got some clowns to deal with, in essence. And so verse number 8, he's going back to Samaria, which is up north. The Lord sent a word unto Jacob. Now that's the southern kingdom. And it hath lighted upon Israel. In other words, there was some prophesying going on down south, and guess who was listening? When you were in school, I don't know if they paddled y'all, but we probably got some folks in here that the teacher would take somebody out in the hall. Kabooey, kabooey, kabooey. Guess what they did to the rest of us? Yes, sir. Absolutely. Well, you straighten your rear end up right now. And so that should have happened, but it apparently did not. All right, verse 9. And all the people shall know by experience, even Ephraim and the inhabitant of Samaria, that say in the pride and stoutness of heart. Now, do you remember 9/11? When all that happened, and I remember seeing these verses, we're going to rebuild. We're going to rebuild, as though that the context was a good thing. They're not going to destroy us. We're going to rebuild. That is not the context of these verses. The context is, all right, Lord, you knock us down. We're going to build it back. So this is sort of a in your face to the Lord. All right? So he says, the bricks are falling down. Yeah, all right. Tear us up. We're going to build with hewn stone. That way you can't do it next time. See, bricks were made out of mud. And when they got wet, they dissolve. Well, guess what doesn't dissolve? Rocks. And so all right, we make an architectural mistake. We're going to build hewn stone. And the sycamores, they're cut down. Now, sycamores are terrible building products. They're soft, and they have knot holes. They're not a good, it's like going from a cabin to a palace. So we're going to cut the sycamores down, and we're going to change them to cedars. Now we've got some good lumber. And we're going to build with something that you can't knock down. Can you imagine how stupid this is? Exactly. It's like, all right, this here building is tornado proof. Really? Okay. Hurricane can't blow this building down. Well, all right, just stand back and watch. Yeah, even God can't sink this ship. All right. Therefore the Lord shall set up the adversaries of Rezin, and that's the king of Assyria, against him, that's Ephraim, and join his enemies together. So, this is getting kind of nasty here. The Syrians before and the Philistines behind. Now, if you lived in the east, you would orient yourself to a compass by always facing east. All right? So what was before you? East. What was behind you? West. What's to your right? South. And north is to the left. All right? That's the orientation of the Bible. That's the calendar of the Bible, or not the calendar, but the compass of the Bible. All right? So let's read it with that understanding. The Syrians before, that's to the east. The Philistines behind, that's to the west. And they shall devour Israel with open mouth. And they did. For all this his anger is not turned away, but his hand is stretched out still. And this is not the hand of grace and blessing. This is a hand of, I told y'all not to trust these people. I am furious. And so he just keeps it coming. All right? And so things are just not looking well at all. For the people turneth not unto him. It's like those folks in Revelation. All this stuff happens and their skin is being burned up, and the mark of the beast, which I think is going to be some sort of a computer implant into the forward or the back of the right hand, that's going to turn malignant. And it's just going to be an awful, horrible, and yet the people cussed God in that condition. And so the people turneth not unto him that smiteth them, neither do they seek the Lord of hosts. Therefore the Lord will cut off from Israel head and tail, top and bottom, the rich, the poor, everybody. Branch and rush. And the branch is like the big branches in a tree, and the rush is the ground cover, all the small bushes, and everything is going to go in one day. The ancient and honorable, he is the head, and the prophet that teacheth lies, he is the tail. I like where he put those prophets. He put them in the rear end. There's nothing worse than preaching lies and telling people, because I tell our students, be careful what you say in the pulpit. Somebody might be listening. Somebody just might be awake, and somebody may take what you say seriously. And so, for the leaders of this people cause them to err, and they that are led of them are destroyed. And so, where was the headwaters of all this corruption? It was in their leadership, politically, spiritually. Therefore, the Lord shall have no joy in their young men, and this is their soldiers, their young men that were in the military. Neither shall have mercy on their fatherless and widows. And there are two classes of people in the Bible that God always shows mercy to. And who are they? The fatherless and the widows. For everyone is a hypocrite and an evildoer, and every mouth speaketh folly. For all this his anger is not turned away, but his hand is stretched out still. He is still furious after all of this. For wickedness burneth as the fire. It shall devour the briars and the thorns, and shall kindle in the thickets of the forest. So it starts with the weeds, the low class, folks that don't have much of anything. But it's going to burn to the big boy, to the suits, right? These guys that are the movers and the shakers are going to move to the forest where the big trees are. And it shall kindle in the thickness of the forest, and they shall mount up like the lifting up of smoke. That phrase, lifting up, I got curious about that, and I looked that up, and it means to strut like a bird. So it's like the smoke that's going to roll off of these people. It's just going to kind of be, I told you, the Lord is even going to use the smoke as a testimony against them. Through the wrath of the Lord of hosts is the land darkened, and the people shall be as the fuel of the fire. No man shall spare his brother. And he shall snatch on the right hand and be hungry, and he shall eat on the left hand, and they shall not be satisfied. They shall eat every man the flesh of his own arm. People are going to be starving. Situations are going to be beyond dire. Manasseh, Ephraim, Manasseh, and they together shall be against Judah. So we got brother against brother. This is a civil war. For all his anger is not turned away, but his hand is stretched out still. Still. Thousands of people, fatherless, widows, everybody, were going to be impacted by this, and they were. Now, this is all, this hadn't happened yet as of the time that it was written. Now, can you imagine reading this horror story about your city or about your country or about your family, and what would you think? You'd be like, Swanee. Isaiah, don't you see good in anything? It's always his fault, right? When they were the ones, they have no mercy on he's going to have no mercy on them, and everybody's a hypocrite and an evildoer, and the mouth is talking all this trash, and people don't understand that decisions create events. This country, for instance, we don't understand that we have scheduled an appointment with the Almighty. We don't know that. Most of the country doesn't know that. I think we've scheduled an appointment with the Almighty in several significant areas. I think one of the major ones was in 1973. We legalized abortion. We scheduled an appointment with the Almighty in 1973. Well, yes, sir. When we legalized and codified gay marriage, we scheduled an appointment. And the way that the Lord judges a people, he removes leadership and gives them children as leaders. He removes the protection. We're porous now. I mean, we've got people in our government that hate this country. We've got people pouring across the border that hate this country. I understand that ISIS now has they're not gone, that ISIS is stirring up a plot for people to inject into our food, like in the grocery store, cyanide with hypodermic needles. So, but God's got it under control. He does. And y'all, yeah, you remember the ice cream liquors? I'm like, are you kidding me? But so we don't buy ice cream. I guess the best thing to cut off that. But this is what 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 17. That's about this Syro-Ephraimitic war. And all they had to do was say, Lord, we're sorry we signed that property or that paper with Assyria. Even if we break and it makes them really, really mad up there, we're doing the right thing. And so we're going to cancel our agreement, and we're going to run to the sanctuary of our God, protect us. You remember that one time the Lord killed 185,000 Assyrians just like that? Put nothing past God, folks. He still protects those people, I'm telling you. There's just no way I would attack Israel if I was. No way. Anyway, all right. Next week, we may even get to chapter 12 next week. I don't know. I'm sorry about that. Thank you all for being here. God bless you. Have a wonderful week. And I hope that we have just some more of this wonderful weather. This stuff is absolutely fabulous. Yes, sir.